What are some very creepy facts? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you get a blood transfusion and the wrong type of blood, A, B, O, AB, one of the symptoms is a sense of impending doom. The Colombian serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez, who is known as the Monster of the Andes, raped and murdered over 300 girls from Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. However, after he was caught and imprisoned for 18 years, he was put in a psychiatric hospital. There, he was reviewed, declared to be sane, and was set free, in spite of his blatant avowal that he fully intends to kill again. Since he was released in 1998, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. He is supposed to be 71 years old at present. He is known for being the most prolific killer ever. There is a genetic disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. When tissue is damaged, it is replaced with bone. Growths form underneath their skin and their joints lock solid. So over time, those affected slowly become encased in a prison of bone just beneath their own skin. They usually have to choose between sitting or standing up for the rest of their life. By the end of their life, they have to drink every meal through a straw and can barely move. Bacteria and viruses can be frozen for millions of years and still be viable infectious, and have never encountered humanity before. Could have no end of catastrophic results should they be uncovered and manage to infect a person or animal. Not to worry though, it's not like millions of ancient pathogens are currently trapped in permafrost, which is now melting bit by bit each and every day. Your eyes have a separate immune system from the rest of your body. If they get damaged in such a way that it affects anything other than your eyes, your regular immune system can attack the damage and will not recognize them, meaning your own body can permanently blind you. What's worse, your body cannot tell the difference between either eye. If one of them gets infected or damaged, your immune system can attack your healthy eye and take away your sight entirely. Rosemary Kennedy was JFK's sister. She suffered from oxygen deprivation at birth, and that unfortunately stunted her mental growth. She had a pretty decent childhood, but as she grew older, she began to act out. Afraid that her behavior would risk his political career, her father Joseph agreed to have her lobotomized. Her mother Rose was against it and forbade him from doing it, so he did it behind her back when she was on a trip. After the operation, Rosemary's already low IQ was lowered even further, to the point she could no longer walk or communicate. Her family had her locked up in an institution and basically disowned her. They never visited and never publicly acknowledged her anymore. Rosemary died at the age of 86. Her mother never forgave her husband for what he had done. The Chankiri Tree is a tree in the Cambodian killing fields against which babies and small children were bashed after their parents had been killed. The men of the ship Essex, the true event that inspires the story Moby Dick, avoided islands after being shipwrecked for fear of cannibals. The islands were settled, and landing there would have brought salvation to the survivors. Ironically, because of this bypass, the men ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. In 1975, the CIA had a heart attack gun. It kills people and then the dart disintegrates. Just imagine what is classified now. Sea cucumbers have teeth in their ass to prevent pearlfish from sneaking in there and eating their balls. Elmer Mccurdy was a failed Old West outlaw. His preserved body was put on display in a traveling carnival, and years later, he was eventually assumed to be a mannequin until he was used on set for a TV show, The $6 Million Man. His arm accidentally fell off during the shoot, revealing bone and muscle, and that he was a corpse, not a mannequin. After raping his blindfolded victims, the Golden State Killer would be super duper quiet and pretend like he was gone, and right when the poor victims would start to move toward the phone or try to untie themselves, he would scare the effing shit out of them. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. Crocodiles can gallop like a horse. I don't like knowing this, so I am cursing you people with this knowledge as well. Fortunately, alligators cannot. Imagine being totally aware of someone performing CPR, but you physically can't move or respond. Well, that's what happens when you get bitten by a blue-ringed octopus. You have approximately 6 minutes between being bitten and someone starting CPR to keep your heart and lungs functioning to ensure you survive, all whilst being totally aware of what is happening to you. Neurotoxins are fun. Your brain can play tricks on you to make you see monsters in the mirror called the Troxler Effect. The Troxler Effect is an optical illusion that affects how you perceive things both visually and mentally. The astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger most likely didn't die until they hit the water miles below the initial explosion. If the sun exploded right now, you would be blissfully unaware of it for just over 8 minutes while the energy travels at the speed of light to get to you. There's a spider that gives you a 3-hour-long boner before you die from its bite. Edit: the boner it gives you is very painful. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Sense of impending doom is an actual symptom that often precedes your death, usually in cases of heart attack. Very creepy for some of us that suffer from anxiety and panic attacks to begin with. Both share that symptom. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue, and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. I bring this up at parties all the time. When climbing Mount Everest, there's a point nicknamed Rainbow Valley or Rainbow Ridge because it's absolutely littered with the bodies of people who attempted to make the climb. The combination of the extremely cold temperature and the bright snowsuits mean that they've become a never-rotting but colorful landmark. Hearing is the last thing to go after you die. You just might hear the paramedics and firefighters call off CPR. Mount Everest is covered in frozen corpses because removing them is very unsafe and time-consuming. They are easily viewed from the climbing routes and some are used as trail markers. The origins of vampires as we know them. Basically, your body has gas build up when you die. I'm not medically inclined enough to explain why. Basically, the gas has to escape somehow, and so it would pass through the vocal cords in the throat. This creates the low moan that makes the body sound as if it was in pain. The people back then had no idea what was happening and random bodies would just start moaning in pain, and thus they believed that the bodies were rising from the dead, and when stabbed, the gas escaped otherwise, thus leading to the belief that the only way to stop a vampire was to stab a dead body in the chest. This also led to a lot of strange burials, i.e., the man that was buried in a stone wall to prevent him from rising from the dead. I can't really blame them. I'd be freaked out too if a corpse suddenly started to make sounds. Creepy for some, but I find stuff like that fascinating. There's documentaries on YouTube talking about it. I highly recommend them. CNN has a pre-recorded broadcast from the 90s which they will premiere during the end of the world. After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no anti-venom, and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. People don't take their anti-malarial drugs when they travel because they hear bad stories about the side effects, and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. The truth is, populations native to malaria-endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst effects. Also, most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the anti-malarials, getting it is so much worse. I fortunately have never had it, but I study it as part of my work and people have told me about having it and they all say the same thing. It is so awful, you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours, and each cycle is agonizing and brings you to the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you, sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system. and can come back at any time. The stonefish is an incredibly venomous fish living in the tropical waters, mostly off the coast of Australia and parts of the US. Can cause pain that only escalates with time. Eventually, the pain will subside, but even after the barb is removed, patients have reported increasing pain 12 plus hours later. Without antivenom or denaturing the venom with excessive heat, the pain builds and builds until the patients request euthanasia. Its spines hold the venom, hidden in its dorsal fins. Aboriginals living around the Great Barrier Reef have corroborees, large gatherings, and will, during these gatherings, hold reenactments of people being stung by this monster for what I assume is either amusement, learning, or both. A black mamba is the fastest snake, which can slither at a speed of 12.5 miles an hour, 20 kilometers per hour. They have neurotoxins, which are fast-acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people, and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, there is an almost 100% kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. They used real corpses in the 1982 film Poltergeist for the ending pool scene. The actress did not know until after the scene was filmed. Cockroaches have been recorded eating human flesh, both living and dead, as well as fingernails, eyelashes, feet, and hands. The American cockroach and German cockroach are more likely to bite humans than other species. Pretty sure Australian cockroaches do something equally creepy, but as an Australian who plans to sleep at some point in the future, I'm not going to Google it. Blobfish, in its natural habitat, looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal glass bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than the water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish. It just had experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. Contrary to popular belief, the Space Shuttle Challenger did not explode. The fuel tank it was attached to did, and it forced the shuttle to change direction so quickly that aerodynamic forces tore it apart. The crew module survived the initial breakup, and it's believed that some of the astronauts were conscious for the long fall back to Earth. Upon inspecting the wreckage, NASA also determined that some of the switches were thrown, indicating that the pilot vainly tried to fly what was left of the shuttle before it crashed into the ocean. If you stifle a sneeze, there's a chance you can damage organs in your head, including eye blood vessels, rupturing your eardrums, and possibly rupturing a brain aneurysm, which means there's a small chance stifling a sneeze can kill you. Better to be the loud ass with the sneeze that can be heard around the world than a dead loud ass because someone told you to stifle that sneeze.